Good morning, Jobman champion. Really excited to be back in the fold today with what is looking to be one of our biggest webinar turnouts yet. So that tells me that this is definitely a very important topic to a lot of businesses, and is certainly one of the main reasons that people come looking for a system like Jobman. And that is, of course, quoting. Foundationally, it's the cornerstone of every business. If you're not selling, you don't have business. So every manufacturing business goes through this process. And whether you be small or large, it's certainly a very big, impactful part of the day. And one of the, I guess, the biggest benefits we've seen to companies that have employed and deployed Jobman throughout their organization is the ability to speed up their quoting process, create more profitable quoting from the outset, see some automation through from where that quoting comes into the rest of their software to really bring a lot more transparency throughout the organization, and then start kicking some serious goals. So welcome. If you haven't seen our previous webinars, we do highly recommend you go to the YouTube channel and have a look. There's a lot of really good foundational information leading up to this point. One of the biggest ones we did a couple of weeks ago was workflow management. And in that webinar, we really highlighted the benefit of where operations come into your software and how they link everything. And now we have the opportunity with the quoting to dive in and show you now the true highlighted benefit of bringing that in both materials, services, labor operations, and so much more. So look, this is going to be jam-packed full of information today. In fact, so much so that we've had to break this webinar into two. We will be doing this over the course of two webinars. Volume 7, which is today's webinar, will cover basic quoting, and then Volume 8 will go into more depth for setting up the advanced and automated quoting. But we're going to go into those features today. So welcome, and let's get started. So our objectives today, or our agenda, is to cover the quote statuses and what they are, basic quoting. We're going to touch on advanced quoting so that you know what you're looking forward to for Volume 8 and how to really start preparing and setting yourself up to utilize the best of the software in this area. Templates, and of course, email acceptance. So Jobman doesn't just help your team with fast, efficient, profitable quoting. It also then has the capacity or capability, is probably a better word, to then communicate directly with your client. So you're always presenting the information in the most professional format and really giving your company a really good standpoint with your customers at next level sort of interaction, which is very important. So the checklist today that we hope by the end of this webinar you'll have a good understanding on is, of course, how to create and edit quote statuses and what those detailed fields mean. Set default statuses so that you've got a nice, easy workflow management for your quoting and estimating process in your business. Understand the automation around those statuses. They are extremely important, and what they can do for your business. How to create basic quotes. We'll be covering a few of those. And understanding quote templates, which is, of course, very important to how you present that information or how your company wants to present that information. And there's a lot of flexibility in our system to handle that for different companies. Understanding the salesperson notification form and quote accept, comment, decline, which is, of course, the round louse loop. We build the quote, we present the quote, we send the quote. Hopefully we get it accepted, it comes back in, and the software lets people know so we can keep moving forward through that lead flow management into job management. So I guess the first one to start on is, what are quote statuses? Quote statuses simply are the ability to track the state of a quote using automation in the system. So if we think about it, much like the statuses we used in the lead and job management previous webinars, these statuses allow for you to see what stage a quote is up to, because as we all know, a quote or an estimate or a contract or however you define it in your software isn't really finished until it's gone through its own mini process. And that mini process is those statuses. So step 1, for example, would be creating the quote. And that's the first status. We're creating it. Right now it's internal information only. And then we move through to the other statuses such as sent, accept, and move forward, for example. So very important. And they link to our leads and our reporting by creating value at predefined statuses. So in simple terms, You can choose in the software, and I'll show you how to do this, what you consider for your company to be a lead value. In some companies, they simply want to know, how many quotes we've got out there this month, how many quotes have the sales team put together, and what is the total value of that. So we can link that to a status, and now every time you bring up your leads report, you'll be able to see all the values of the quotes the team are working on. For other companies, sent is not good enough. What they're really looking for is to define those quotes that have been accepted. How much work have we won versus how much work have we lost? So where quotes have been superseded or rejected, for example. And that's the important metric for their companies. So utilizing statuses allows us to link those up to what we call value definitions. And by that step, start allowing the system to give you some really good reporting. So now we've got our lead management set up. We had our quoting done, getting our values. We're starting to get the really important benefit back from the software very early on improving your processes and, obviously improving your win rates and profitability, which is a big reason we're here. So status is very important, but very easy to set up. Not a problem. We're going to show you those today. So at a foundational level, Jobman has 4 areas in its quoting. We have sections, we have items. Inside those items, we have components, and certain components you can even take to a 4th layer and inside a quote see the element. Don't worry, we're going to cover all that. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but basically each of these areas adds a lot of functionality to your quoting. This is not a simple quoting system. It's designed for you to be able to build it, utilize it over and over and over again, tweak and improve the process. And of course, as things change in your business, such as stock or catalog prices go up or labor operation default charge out rates, the system's designed to handle all that. So once you have your set up to your level that you wish to use for your business, the software then provides a lot of that automation going forward and a lot of transparency. So at a basic level, basic quoting is adding sections and items, and then within those items, the ability to add material services and labor operations. Based on each of those what we call components, they have an overhead, wastage, and profit margin. So we'll be covering that today so that you understand what each of those things mean and how you can best use them. Now, the reason we're starting with basic quoting rather than diving straight into the advanced stuff, which I know a lot of people are keen to see, is number one, we want to give you a really good foundational understanding of what each of these things mean. But 2, it's really important to note that you don't have to go to the level of building huge automative, CAD/CAM importing, preset quoting to really get the best out of the system. You can come in, day one, and if you've seen some of our previous webinars, you would have set up some workflows and you've started importing some catalog. You can just come in, add an item, throw some labor materials in there, as you're probably doing now with your quoting in an Excel spreadsheet, for example, and you're off. And you'll still get the best benefit of the system. So this is really important for us to start at the point where you can just come into the software and start getting some return immediately. You don't need to spend months setting this up to get the best out of it. And because you'll start immediately seeing some benefit and getting some wins out of that, that should hopefully free up some time for the project management team and the owners and the estimators to be able to get together and say, well, hey, we're using this at this level and it's working really well. We're seeing the benefit. What else can we do? And that's why we've separated these webinars so that you can start here and then move to there if you want to, and get the full automation of benefit from the software. So what does that look like? In reality, in our quoting section, as I just mentioned, you can see here that I'm inside an item. I'll explain what sections or items are in a moment. And in here, at a very basic level, I'm able to add some very simple information, which is very powerful. So I can come in here and I can add line items for simple information. Like if you just want to come in and say, hey, the price for this is X, there's the price, there's the markup, no problems. You can add materials from your catalog directly in. So if you're used to doing your manufacturing and when you quote for a job, you come in, you say, well, okay, it's going to use this many materials with this much markup, and it's going to be this many hours of operation with this much markup. There you go, straight in at a basic level into Jobman. Fantastic. We've got the quote. We can present it to the client. We start winning more jobs. You can also add things like services and things like groups, and there'll be more categories to come in the future. I know a couple of categories that the team is working on at the moment are appliance and sundry. So you'll have even more things you can just add directly into a quote really fast. And they don't require a lot of setup. As you saw with the catalog video, it's very easy to come in, import your catalog from suppliers, and get up and running. You've just built your operations as part of your workflow. So your operations there, ready to go. You just need to apply some pricing to these areas and you're off, and build a couple of services, which is good. The next layer, which we will be covering in detail in version 8, but I want to mention it now so that you know whether you're heading with the software and where you can get the benefit, is products and the use of style items. And products, in a very generic sense, are a combination of parts and labor put into an item that can be added to a quote, or a component that can be added to a quote. And the two benefits of products in Jobman is that they are parametric if you build the parts proportionately. So as I stretch the product, it gets bigger, therefore there's more material usage. Therefore, I want Jobman to automatically calculate what those prices now are. And two, the materials themselves can be affected by what's called schedules or style items. So we're not just limited to having to say, well, we have to produce 4 million variations of products in your system. That'd be crazy. Instead, we say you build one product and we give you the ability to stretch it, make it any shape and size you want, which will affect the pricing. And then you can tell the software using styles what it's made out of, what level or grade of the materials of those parts are made out of, and therefore what should the price be based on that schedule. So we're going to cover that in a lot more detail in the next webinar, but I wanted to bring that up now so that was a clear understanding of where the real benefit of this is going. So first step, we'll get in some line items, some labor, operations, materials, services, and be able to move forward with the software really quickly. Day one, we can be into this. And then where do we want to head from there? And the ultimate goal, of course, with the software is full-scale automation, advanced quoting, where we can come in and we can add what's called presets. Inside those presets are products, there can be materials, there can be labor, there can be services, and this is basically like a template. And your estimating team, you just come in, hit a button, in that template comes based on that type of job, and then fill out the quote to match that job. Line up the style items, change the parametrics, and off you go. And you can very quickly, using this automation, build multi-million-dollar quotes very fast. And that's the superpower of Jobman. But even if you're not doing multi-million-dollar projects, it doesn't matter. This benefit for even standard day-to-day business operation of being able to fast quote, see your profit live, impact your margins, and see what happens when you tweak and modify those is extremely important. And this is, of course, of huge benefit to every business. And that's why it's the foundational cornerstone of Jobman. Those are the two foundations: workflows and quoting. Everything else is just the cream. This is the foundation of the software and where it gives you the best benefit in your business. So, of course, because we can create good quoting, we have the ability then for you to produce templates in the system. And as by standard, the system comes with several templates already. So there's a lot of this already built for you. It's just a matter of configuring it for your business and making the information show how you want it to show. For example, I've just got a very basic example here of the quote we just produced. You can see my logo. You can see who the quote is for. Sections broken down into items with simple values built in. And that's how you like to present your quote. The system can handle that. In a real world example, this would look something like, let's say you're a cabinet maker and you're pushing this quote out. Section might be house reno. And these items, instead of basic, advanced, and automation, would be kitchen, bathroom, and laundry, for example. And there's your price. If you like to provide more information to your clients, though, you can. We've got a very good HTML templating system. So you can come in and say, well, I don't just want to show the items themselves. I actually want to show the inclusions. So my client has a really good understanding of what they're getting for the money they're spending. I want them to show the line items, all the materials, or the labor, or the products, or the breakdowns, or the dimensions. But I just want an area price. So I don't want them being able to go down the road and comparing, apples for pears. In our business, we like to present those items, and then they can see the quote. And if they're happy with the quote, they can move forward. And that's part of your service to your client. But it's very clear, it's very professional, very good to see. And you can even take it even further and say, actually, we do a lot of commercial breakdown work or builder work, or or even high detailed residential work. And people do want to know the exact breakdown of these costs, so they know exactly what's happening for the money they're spending with our company. And we like to present that. So you can do that with the software. And here's a good example where I've just taken that next step and added that pricing. But the beauty of what you can see is you can modify and configure the software to suit your business. And I think this is really important. So that it's not just we present several options for you to certainly help you along your way. So you don't have to spend hours and hours working through templates. They're there ready to go. But you can quite easily come in here, tweak and modify those templates, and be able to make them really suit your business, which is super important. And then, because as we've previously mentioned, Jobman is an emailing in and out service. We have the ability to direct email our clients with their quotes, so that we can send this quote through. Now you'll notice here that it's, if any of you have ever used Xero, we use a similar mentality for creating our quote links, and it's basically a link that goes direct out, which opens up a web browser for them. It's a live link, so changes made, much like Xero, and their invoicing, the client can now see. And most importantly, that then gives them the opportunity to come back in and accept, decline, and comment on your quotes. It sounds like such a simple feature, but I'll be honest, in almost every business I've spoken to who've put this practice into their businesses and started using Jobman and its quoting, it has a monumental effect on their win-loss rates. Not to mention, if someone comes back and comments or declines the quote and says, actually, I'd like to see more boards or more hours of cutting or more products in there, or can you tweak this, can you change this style item? The fact that you can take that quote, modify it very easily and shoot it straight back to them will improve your win-loss ratio incredibly. It's the number one, I read an article once, it's the number one frustration for customers dealing with manufacturing services is the length of time it takes to get quotes in and out. And it's not just them, it's you as well. Your businesses are so reliant on this time, to the point where we speak to many, many, many small to medium manufacturers, and the biggest constraint in their week or their day is quoting. They're losing so much time to quoting, to the point where, they're missing out on weekends and birthdays and spending time with their kids, which is, absolutely not what we want for businesses. We want to provide a solution where you can come in, get the benefit of the quoting, improve your process, improve your win rate. Better win rates, of course, is more business, which is the ultimate game here. But even before you've won the quote, to be able to see that profitability, I can't stress this enough. The power of Jobman's open profitability from the outlook is so important to a business. And then to be able to present this information professionally. We've got clients out there who, because Jobman scales on mobile, tablet, or devices, they go out with clients with a tablet, drawing up their dream home on some basic drawing platform package, and then almost live in front of the client, putting together a quote and say, hey, is this what you want? And that's incredible, getting people while they're in that rush and they're in that momentum, not giving them time to come back and think about the quote or go look for more quotes, have them while they're keen and excited. Yeah, this is what we're looking for. This is what we want. Absolutely. Oh, that's a reasonable price. Fantastic. Let's go ahead. You know what I mean? It all ties in together, and Jobman really puts that together for its clients and makes it as easy as possible for you to achieve. So let's have a look at this in real life inside the software. I've put together some information already, which will follow through with what we've just seen, so it becomes nice and clear. And then I'll show you some of the areas where we can start tackling some of that basic pricing points, so that you can start getting this up and running today. If you came into Jobman and your primary concern was workflow management and capacity, and you've seen our previous webinars, you've probably got that set up by now, and you go, this is awesome. I'm starting to win back time. We're getting transparency. The team's starting to all get on board on mission. We're seeing critical dates. Absolutely fantastic. Now's a good time to start thinking about what else you can do with the software, and quoting at a foundation is really important, because as we said previously, what we put into these quotes, when they become accepted and push into the job, push forward. And this is the key. So even at a basic level, if I'm adding operation time, I'm adding services, I'm adding materials, when that quote in that lead becomes accepted and linked to a job, all that information flows through, and there's your automation. Absolutely fantastic. So let's have a look at this. The first place I want to start, unfortunately, is settings. I know it's not ideal, but we definitely want to have a look at a few of these things, just so you can get a bit of a feel and understanding where they lie, so you can get some quick goals up and running. And then we'll dive into the quote and have a look at those areas. So under settings, there's two important places we want to have a quick look whilst getting this set up. And fully aware that's the point to these webinars, is to give you a bit more of a deep dive and detailed understanding of how we can achieve these things. So the first area is settings, quoting, and statuses. Now, the good news is you don't have to set these up. We've done the hard work for you. They're already ready to go, but we want to give you a bit of an understanding around what they are, just so that if you want to change the names or tweak them a little bit or make them suit your business, you can. And of course, you can modify these statuses. As I said, the whole point to them is automation. So each of these statuses has what we call an allowance built into it. So what that means is there are certain actions that can and cannot be taken when these statuses are live. Some of the statuses have the ability then to cause the system to have value, as I said. So in my example here, we have 3 types of quotes statuses that will have value for our lead reporting. And those are estimate sent, revision, and quote accepted. So when we're doing our numbers, we can see those very clearly. How many quotes have we done this month? How many have been won? How many have been changed? Super important. Now, the exciting thing about statuses is you can only be in one status at a time. So even though I have these 3 values turned on, if a quote has been sent and then accepted, it's only in one of those statuses. It's only in the status of quote accept. So your system isn't going to double up the values, which is really important to note. So you can have multiple status turned on to have value, and it won't impact your reporting because it'll only ever sit in one status. So this is a pretty standard, I would imagine, sort of quote status setup for most people. And that is, the estimate has been created, or the quote. You can change these names, of course. The estimate has been sent. Maybe it's in a revision process while we're back and forwarding with the client to see what we're going to achieve. The quote has been accepted, or it has been superseded or rejected. So these are pretty standard statuses. Like I said, you can tweak them to suit your business. However, I think these are a pretty good run through. And as always, we recommend utilize what the software has built into it already, get it up and running in your business, start getting the benefit, and then start tweaking down the path. That way you don't feel like you're in a software platform and you're having to do all this setup before you can achieve. Day one, you can get in here, you can achieve these things and move forward. Just a quick explanation on a couple of these. Most will make a lot of sense and they're very, very transparent on what they mean. But just so there's no confusion, there is, generally speaking, you will only have one type of accepted comment status, so that will link just to a quote accept, so that becomes really clear in your reporting. And same with your declined and superseded, there will generally only be one option there. You may have multiple options that have value, but you will generally also only have one status that can be invoiced. And this is really important. This is a protection for your business, so that when we're creating quotes, we don't necessarily want invoice to become from just simply quote created. They have to be accepted. It's like a contract. The client has accepted the contract of that quote or estimate. Therefore, I can create invoices from it and kick the process forward. So these here are designed as protections. So status is not just good for automation, they're also extremely important for protecting your software and your business, make sure things are done. Other statuses you might have multiples of, such as to have value and can be updated. For example, once an estimate's been created, of course, it can be changed. Once it's been sent and the client wants to make changes, it should be able to be updated, and same with revision. So a revision, just so you know the difference between, a quote and a revision, is Jobman uses quote numbers, which I'll show you in a moment, which are really good for setting up your automation and transparency around how many quotes did it take to get to this point. And sometimes there'll be minor tweaks during the process, which in case you just go in, update the quote, shoot it back to the client, keep the process going, nice and easy. On the odd occasion though, the client might come in and they might accept quote number 1, but then they might turn around a couple of days before you've actually paid the deposit invoice. So actually, no, we've changed our mind. Your sales rep did an absolutely fantastic job when they came out. We've decided we are going to go with the upgrade. We want the better quality steel or the stone bench tops or whatever it might be. So revision is the ability to say, okay, well, we've had that as an accepted quote, but we haven't pushed it forward yet. We want to utilize that quote, but change it slightly, but we want a record of that business. So utilizing a revision means we can revise the quote, it supersedes it, it creates a new copy. That copy has the same quote number, but it'll be /2. So now we're getting a historic record, and then you can make the changes and follow the process again. And that new revision will be in the status estimate created. The beauty of this is you don't have to, once the statuses are set up, you and the team aren't managing them, the software will do it automatically as you change and create things. For example, I create the quote, it'll automatically be in the estimate created. Once I hit that send button or email, it'll automatically become email sent. If the client comes back and accepts, it'll automatically move into the status quote accept. So absolutely fantastic. Now, the benefit of that revision process then is you now have a historic record, but also you can see where your estimators or your reps are really doing their job at increasing value for your business. Sometimes it's quite common in organizations. We hear that they have really good reps that go out there and they sell well and they pump volume numbers, but you'll have one or two reps in particular that just seem to get a better value out of their clients. And they might take a little bit longer. They might close a few less deals, but they're always improving and increasing profitability. And I think that's important information for you to be able to track and see, and Jobman can certainly handle that for you. The second area in settings, which is of course important, and I'm only going to mention it very briefly because you would have seen this in the last video on the setup, is of course the pricing elements that are going to impact our quoting. And this is at the basic level. We'll cover the advanced level of pricing elements, including style items and categories in the next quoting setup, so you get a really good understanding of where they sit and how to utilize them. But it's important to know when asking the information, where is Jobman drawing that pricing from? This is where at an overarch level. So settings, catalog pricing is where you set up your labor default charge out rates, your material expenses, service expenses, et cetera, et cetera. So every time I add a material to a quote, by default, it will take the cost of the catalog item and it'll multiply it by 20% profit margin. Every time I add a labor operation to a quote, it will bring in my charge out rate 140. I have my software set up, and I think I briefly mentioned this last time, to have a default charge out rate because it makes the most sense, rather than have a cost and a profit, but you're welcome to do it however suits your business the best. Every time I do that, that's what the software will do. When I add a service in, it will add the service at the cost, no overhead, no wastage, with a 20% profit margin. So that's where it's drawing this information from for the quoting, just so it's really clear. And of course, if you have a quoting program you use currently and you're starting to move into Jobman and utilize Jobman, this is fantastic because this gives you an opportunity to side by side some jobs. You know what I mean? Replicate the process. Come up with your current system, whether it be an Excel spreadsheet or another platform you're using. Put in what you would expect this costing to be now, and then put the same costing into Jobman and see what happens. And quite often, the question I get is, "Oh, there seems to be a bit of difference. Where would I look to see where those prices might be impacting?" And this is the first place I said people go have a look at your settings, catalog pricing setup, and maybe you just need to tweak those numbers. Maybe we've set the material schedule pricing a little bit high. It's pushing the costings up. Not a bad thing, Jobman's there to help you make money and improve profitability, but also very important to make sure that we're winning those jobs. So into quotes themselves. Now, quotes need to be linked to a lead. Super important point I'm going to make right now, and I get this question all the time. Why can't I just grab a contact, start a job? Why do I have to go through this lead process? And the reason is reporting. Whether you make the lead process really simple, we covered this in the last webinar, whether you make it stupendously simple, 2 statuses and 2 tasks, client contacted, quote 1 accepted or sent, estimate created, and then job 1. That's fine. But it's really important to have that information. And there's a couple of reasons why you want it for your reporting. Number one is it gives you the ability to track the most important metric here, which is, quotes sent and won, which equates to basically leads, dealt with and won, which is that first metric. How many people are coming through our door? How many of them are then taking to the quoting process? And of those people that are quoting, how many are then converting? And this is where we build the foundation of that first layer of reporting. So without it, we can't build that reporting. Now, that might not be important to your business, but it's still a very good foundation to have. You may as well have the data in the system. And as I said, even if you keep it really simple, it's still worth doing. So that's the first reason. The second reason is a lead can connect into multiple jobs. So you might have a larger scale project, for example, and you might be dealing with a commercial company, and you might end up building 4 or 5 quotes, and they're for different areas. For example, the recent upgrade of the Murdoch Hospital, John Goddard Hospital built in Western Australia, was actually 4 different tenders. I think one company won 3 of them over here, but it was 4 different tenders. Now, it's still technically one lead. It's one contact. It's, the Government of Western Australia Health Service Department. The lead is the conversation and the contract management around each of those tenders, but it was actually 4 different quotes presented and tendered by most of those companies because they could handle the joinery or the steel manufacture or the internal fit outs for all 4 of those different sections. So if you won, let's say you won all 4, you could then take each of those quotes and push them into an individual job that could be managed down to work orders. If you skip the whole process and remove lead management out of the software, that becomes really difficult for a software platform to do. It sort of becomes contact to job. And that's why this lead management is so important. That's why we link quotes to leads. Now, it is super important. You can come into the software and I can just create a quote right here. But the first thing the software is going to do is it's going to ask you to link it to a lead. And that's why that exists. So I just wanted to explain that quickly because I do get the question a lot. This is why we have that managed in there. It provides metrics, provides information, and there's a lot of automation in the system that we're going to cover in our next webinar around why having those items and those specs in those leads to produce better quoting and automation going forward are so important. But just for now, at a basic level, that's why. And like I said, you don't have to make this complicated. Have a very simple lead process, client in, quoting process, job 1, create those quotes, and we'll start building that data for the system. And here's the quote we produced earlier so that you could see. This was the quote we broke down into the multiple different areas with the information that were presented in those photos. And I want to dive into those just a little bit. I won't spend too much time here, but just so you sort of understand what we achieved, those 4 layers. So part 1, of course, is all the relative information to the quote itself at a holistic level. And there's a couple of important areas here. Number 1, it's quote description. It's optional. You don't have to enter it, but for a lot of people, they're not referring to their clients to quote numbers. They're referring them to an internal description of that quote. For example, the Abbey and Wells kitchen renovation, or the BJC fencing operation or the mining donga build, whatever. That's your opportunity to put it here. The second important part is the application of a salesperson. And a salesperson in our software allows for important things such as notifications. Now, the salesperson is not necessarily always the lead owner, and that's why we have these 2 separated in the software. Your sales team might be broken in, as it is in many companies, into the sales team and the estimation team. Now, the estimation team aren't the ones talking to the clients. They're not the ones out there spruiking your product or attempting to close sales. They simply produce estimations based on the information the sales team have given them. So this is really important. Now, the reason why we have the salesperson here is because when the comment, accept, or decline notification is pulled back from the quote, this is the person that we notified in the software. So that's super important to note. That's who's created the quote, modified the quote, and sent it. They're the one, the direct client liaison. That's who we want knowing when this happens, so we can push it forward, tick that task off, and keep the flow moving forward. So very important. This is our templating information here. So this is where we can choose different ways of presenting our quote. And you can build, like, as I said, the software comes with multiple as standard, but you can build more. You can change these, you can tweak these, you can modify these. Much like the lead flow management and job flow management, my recommendation is before you start playing with a quote template, definitely copy it first and then make the changes in the updated one so that if it all goes pear-shaped, you can delete it and come back to the basic, which is very important. We have our tax types in here, our style configuration, which we'll talk about in the next video, as well as remove product labor, and of course the date of the quote and expiry dates. These can be set up as a standard in the software. So if your quote allowance is 30 days, that's what it will pull through. These are also managed by the contact, so you can manage this at the contact level. If you have multiple areas of your business, such as you do private work versus business work, or B2B work, commercial work, you might have differing quote acceptance rates. For your private work, it's 14 days. You've got to get back to us very quickly. Otherwise, the quote is out of date. We have to requote, prices may have gone up, et cetera, et cetera. But if you commercial work, there might be longer lead time, or tender work or government work, whatever you manufacture. So you may have longer quote acceptance allowance rate on there. So all that can be built in here. And then you can see our layers straight off the bat. So we have sections, and you can have multiple sections. So I can add new sections in here. So I can build multiple sections in the software, and I can have items at the first layer. Now, what's the difference? What are they? What do they do? The idea behind sections is, think of sections like an area or a larger scale step in your quoting process. For most standard quoting, this is not particularly useful, and it's not something you'll use every day. It's just there for larger scale abilities to quote. So if you do commercial work, for example, and I'm going to use joinery as an example because it's a good one, and you build high rises, your sections will be your levels. And then your items, which is the next layer down, would be your apartments. So section, level 1, apartments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. New section, level 2, apartments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., so on and so forth. So it's a really clean way of storing the information, presenting the information, but most importantly, the automation, which we'll cover in an upcoming video, behind turning jobs into work orders by the ability to create items from a quote, pull them out of a quote and create a work order from them. It's extremely powerful. So even at a very day-to-day level, and I'll keep with the joinery example, your section might be house reno. Your items might be kitchen, bathroom, laundry, ensuite. Inside the kitchen, there will be different products, materials, labor, and styles used to what's used in the bathroom, to what's used in the laundry, to what's used in the ensuite. In another example, for example, fencing, you might come in and your items might be as part of the commercial job you're doing. Item 1 might be the chain link fencing. So it's the back, the security fencing, but the client might also wish you to do some internal fencing, some better fencing, to round off gardens or staff areas, for example. In metalwork, quite often items would be broken down by the type of work it's going to be. So the item might be, for example, laser cut, water cut, cold saw. Each of those items has a different process and a different type of material and different labor operation and different times attached to them. So breaking them down into items, 1, makes it really clear to the client what we're quoting on, but 2, and most importantly for your internal process, begins that process of automation. We're putting them in buckets that make sense, that we can later down the track pull apart into job work orders. So first level of understanding is understanding sections and items. Really, really, really powerful. Very important. And then inside our items, of course, is what I said is our components. Now, there's 2 things to note here. Number 1, you can add some descriptions to your item layers. And there's a nice little box in here that you can easily edit, update, and put some information into, which has some good information, including the ability to link out to commercial works and templating information for your quotes. But adding descriptive inclusions in here is a really good first layer for most businesses. Yep, what are we quoting on? We're quoting on the kitchen, and the standard inclusions will include soft close hinges, premium handles, stone bench tops, and a high-grade finish board. So very simple, quick, descriptive inclusion. This information now is available to your team. So anyone looking at this quote, moving forward this job, can now see that information. But most importantly, this can be presented to the client so they can see that information at a high level. So even if you don't generally include all the inclusions inside your quote, you can still tell them what's going on. And they get that information, they get their price. I'm happy, let's move forward. Or actually, can you show me this quote with the standard handle range instead of the premium, for example? Can you show me this in marine grade ply or powder coated aluminium? It's going to be a high salt area as opposed to low grade, for example. So really lots going on here that you can communicate with your client. And what we're going to focus on today is that basic level. So how can I get up and running with the software nice and quickly, come in, start a section, create an item, move in, and what can we add? And this is where, as I showed you in that picture, we can keep things really simple to begin with. We can just add in the line items. So if the very first thing you want to do with the software is just come in, start creating some quick quotes, and come in here, add an item to a section, call that item, whatever you want to call it, and then add a light item and say this quote is for stuff, and it's going to be $3,000. Done. We can take it one step further, and we can start adding in those catalog materials that we presented in our catalog and add those directly in. So in this job, I'm building a shed. There's going to be X meters of channeling, X meters of concrete, X square meters of sheet metal, roofing, gutters, etc. Add all those in, then add in the labor operations. Give me this much cutting, this much welding, this much delivery, this much install, et cetera, this much assembly, this much purchase ordering, whatever you charge on as the operations for your business. Put those in here with those charge out rates, and then any services that need to be done. So, delivery charges, contract installers, anything relative to the business. Now, the beauty of Jobman is all of this information is live. And number 2, all this information can be modified on the fly. So just because I've set this electrical work up for this job, it's a small, annoying job. So I'm actually going to up the electrical work rate just for this job. Now, that isn't going to affect my service. When what we call components or elements come into the quoting software, they are now detached from their parent. So whether it be products or materials or items, any changes I make at this layer won't affect my library. That's a really important thing to note. I can make changes live in a quote, bespoke to every single job, and that will just be affected on this quote. Similarly, if I had a client discount in here already connected to that contact, that would already be here, or I can apply one live. Now, just before I hit this button, I want to show you something really important. I keep banging on about this profit-driven quoting. What am I talking about? Up the top here is a culmination of all the effects of those pricing elements built into my quoting. The beauty of this being is before I've even sent or accepted the quote, we have the opportunity to see how much money you're going to make on that job, all things being equal, all things going to plan, assuming this takes 5 hours of cutting, assuming the electrical project management is 5 hours purchase ordered out, assuming I can buy, my base material at $13.50 a square meter, all things being equal, I am going to make 11.84% profit. And this is true profit margin. We don't work on profit markup here. We believe in true profit margin. So really important metric for your business is to say, take all my costs, and then how much do I have to sell them for to make this amount of money? And that's what true profit margin is. And that's what we work on. So the minute I start discounting things, Jobman will automatically recalculate those profit margins and start saying where things are going to start going down. Now, at the moment, I'm okay. I started at 20, I popped a 10% discount in there, I'm 11%. If I start going really hard, things are going to start calculating, and eventually this will get to the point where things actually start going red, where we're making zero profit on this item. And I can, in fact, force this into a negative if I push it really, really, really hard. So that's a massive step one benefit for a lot of companies. You'd be amazed the amount of companies we've spoken to who have said, I couldn't honestly tell you how much we make on jobs. We've never had a system to be able to track that front. Like, well, now you can, because all this information will go from yay to nay through the job. And the very first job they run, they realize that they haven't changed their material schedule pricing in 3 years. Price has been going up for 3 years. They haven't changed their material pricing, and they're literally losing money presenting jobs before they've even presented them, just to win work. And that in itself could be a hundreds of thousands up to millions of dollars back in your pocket over the course of years. And in fact, I had a client recently who had agreements made with certain clients, and they were offering discounted rates. They love the automation. You set up the quoting of the presets already in. Clients would move forward, be pushing out quotes. And within a month of using Jobman, he realized they were losing money because they hadn't updated their material schedule pricing to cover the fact that their commercial grade clients were getting discounts heavy enough that were breaking their system. Jobman started going red all over the place. Absolutely fantastic. All we've done is we just added very basic information to this quote, and we're off and running. Really important. So absolutely fantastic. Now, there's 3 other areas here that I guess are important to mention, not just discounting. And those are overhead, wastage, and profit. Now, overhead and wastage are margin markups. So they are, markups, not margin. They are direct. If I put 10% overhead on here, it will times the cost by that overhead, and then it will increase the sell price of the unit to allow myself to make 20% profit margin. So overhead and wastage are both direct markups. You do not have to use both. You do not have to use either. Not a problem at all. They're simply there because a lot of companies work that way. They have a base core price, for example, this material, and they want to give some overhead and some wastage allowance because we know there's handling involved, etc., before we actually make the material schedule profit. So really important. And again, even though we've set these up at our hierarchical level or our category level, if you've seen our previous webinar, I can come in here and these are modifiable. So I can come in and change that element price live just for this quote. It's not going to affect all of my quotes. It's not going to affect my catalog or my history. It's just for this quote. I'm making those numbers. And of course, at any point, you can come in here and you can override. I show the bad example as a line item. You can override the price presented, and Jobman will recalculate here. So it's gone and it's worked out that the cost is $250. I've just upped the price from $349. It's reverse engineered. The profit margin is now 50% on that item. So all the smarts are there. Everything's, ready to go at your fingertips without a problem. So that's basic quoting. I'm not going to go any further than that. I do have these advanced and automation sections set up ready for us to start discussing next time, so we can look at products and their impact and full automation from presets. There are two more things I do want to quickly show you, just so that you can get a good grasp on basic quoting and how to move this forward. And that is, of course, how we achieved the email, comment, accept, and decline. Here it is. Here's my email template. I can shoot it through. I can drop and drag and attach files. Super important. I can change these templates. I can put a lot more information in here. There's a lot of important information that can be done. I can preview the email before I send it. And then, of course, I can shoot it. Now, the beauty of that is by doing that, this status will update. And that's what I did previously. I sent this. It went from estimate created to estimate sent. So there's your statuses in action. There's your profit live. It's also important to note you can copy quotes. So if you start making a quote and you're rocking around and then the client starts making a heap of changes, you might want to copy this quote first and then supersede this version to create a copy so that you can start working with the base information without having to redo all that work. You want to supersede that quote. And as I said, what will happen is this is quote 2405-001. One superseded or revision has been created. The next one will become O2. So it's still linked to that core quote number. We've got a sequence of references. The statuses are changing. So right now, if this is $7,200 and I supersede it, I create a copy, supersede this one and move forward and create the new one. It's okay. My lead values aren't going to stuff up because I can see that one is in a rejected status, or sorry, the software can see one is in a rejected status and one is in my new value statuses. So all those smarts are there. And of course, we have those templates that can be sent out. Something that I probably should have mentioned previously, and it has eluded me to as why I've not brought it up, but it's such a small thing, but such a powerful thing for a lot of companies, is Jobman does a lot of activity tracking for you. So a common question we get is, hey, look, I was the core owner of this lead or this quote, and I've sent it out, but I feel like changes have made. That doesn't look like the numbers I remember presenting to the client. Not a problem. We activity track virtually everything in here. So you can tell if someone's come in, for example, modified that quote, made those changes. So you can see what's going on. You can also add notes. So if there's certain important particular things that are relevant to this particular quote or estimate, we can have those notes there. So again, they're transparent to the team. So much good stuff going on here, so much digital benefit to your business. And the last one I'm going to touch on before we move into some Q&A is all of this is amazing. This is fantastic. But I have two concerns, and this is a common one we get. The first concern people ask us is, I might have an estimating team or a sales team, but I don't necessarily want them knowing my costing. Now, in an idealistic world, we live hopefully in an area where you trust all your staff and all is good. But for a lot of businesses, this is extremely private information. They don't need their staff knowing what their markups and overheads are, because they don't understand how business works. So they don't understand that we need to make this amount to pay everyone's wages, cover all our overheads, and make profit. That's not their concern. So the very first concern I want to bypass on your shoulders here is, whilst this is extremely powerful, you do have the ability in the staff roles, permissions, to shut down these four columns, I believe here. So what then will happen is when they are adding materials or products or services or line items to your system, they can affect the quantity, they can affect the style, and they can see the price, but they won't see the costings behind that. If they then need to negotiate a price with a client to win a job, they then have to come to you as their manager or business owner and as part of your process and say, hey, I really want to win this job. I think it's worth putting 5% in there maybe just to get across the line. It's a big job. Are you okay with that? You can go in, modify the quote, save it, send them an email or a quick notification, say, hey, I've just modified that quote for you. I agree. We'll give them the 5%. You can now send it. And they don't know what has happened. They can't see it physically. They can't see the changes for your system. So you're getting the benefit of profitability and live quote actioning whilst having that protection. So that's an important one to note, that because you're setting up these costs in the background, they don't necessarily have to see them. It also means they're not impacting that pricing unless you want them to be able to. So that's a big question I get. And I think that's just worth mentioning at this point. The second part is these HTML templates. Not everyone has an HTML superstar, and I certainly am not. But they are quite easy to modify for some basic HTML knowledge. And there's a lot you can do with them. We put a lot of variables into the templates, things like your pricing structure breakdown. You can have as variables here above or below the terms and conditions, so that in your business, if you ask for a 20% deposit followed by a 20% follow-up, followed by 20% at manufacture dispatch stage, and then the final 40% comes out at completion of delivery. You can put those payment terms in here. We have the variables for them. You can expand on these terms and conditions so that every quote really does become a contract and has all that information live when you're presenting it. And there's a lot more you can do. You can add in things like item specs, for example. Now, if you aren't particularly handy with HTML, and I certainly am not, there's a lot of services out there such as Fiverr. It's very cheap. You can ask for some HTML coding. You can send them the HTML. It's all visible in our software, and say, hey, can you tweak this and modify this using these variables to achieve this outcome? And they can do it pretty easily and standard for you. And you can really build some nice customized templates for your business. Standard information such as your logo, name, and all these are drawn from the software. So you can update all those under the settings, and they'll always present in those templates. And we've built the variables in to make it nice and easy. And as much as possible, we put as many templates in as we can. As people ask for templates, we tend to sort of look at those needs, and we build quite a few, and we put them in the base so that you don't have to do it. But just to let you know, that's the option there. If you've got someone in your business who's half okay with, and honestly, you can Google most HTML stuff, and you'll probably be able to figure it out pretty quick. Otherwise, if you're looking for some more professional templates, Fiverr's the best place for it. So I think that pretty much wraps everything I want to cover on the quote basic end of town. Certainly looking forward to the advanced end and diving into products and presets. But I think this is a really good starting point so that everybody understands statuses, how to use the software, how to get the benefit, how to get the email in and out. And then most importantly, of course, how we can get that benefit up and running, fast in our business without having to, go through a huge amount of setup to operate Jobman. So look, absolutely fantastic. As always, make sure you jump on our YouTube channel and subscribe. We're producing content at lightning pace at the moment, making sure we're getting plenty of information and education out for our clients, both current and future. So there's plenty on there. You've always got the in-app help as well at all times. So don't ever forget, if I've moved a bit quick or there's something you sort of saw and you want a bit more detailed information, jump in the in-app help, search for it, bring up the talk. 30 seconds later, you'll be all over it. And that's really important. So there's plenty there for you. And now we do have a little bit of time up our sleeve, not as much as I was hoping, but it's certainly a big area. We'll get some questions and answers covered. If you feel like you've got enough out today and you need to run on with your day, and everyone's pretty busy at the moment, please feel free to leave now. Thank you very much for joining. We really appreciate your time. If you are interested in some of these questions, though, do stick around. I'll answer them. And as always, so long as you've registered for this webinar, you'll receive a copy. So even if you're unable to attend today, not a problem. I certainly hope this has been very helpful and informative. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all in the next one. All right, let's grab some questions. First question, is there a way, sorry, it's just about gone. Is there a way to copy a quote to a different contact? We often quote for a job for builders. Fantastic question, Felicity. Currently, the answer to that question is no. You can copy quotes, but it can't be linked to a new contact. However, we identified this early on as something we'd very much like to achieve. So the ability to take a quote, copy it, and link it to a new lead, so that you can achieve that exact process. And I can tell you with very happy news that is in the works. And it will be coming out very soon. It's on the engine board right now. So yes, you will be able to copy a quote or duplicate a quote and push it over to a new lead. Most of you will have also noticed that this week or last week, I think we had a massive update in the software, which is the ability now to create what we call positive variations, which means even though you have a quote and has been accepted and you've then moved that quote into a job, for the first time ever, you can now come back in to that linked lead. And this is, again, why those leads are so important as that link to that job. And you can create new quotes, variations, and additions to the job, and then link those back to the job. New variations, to the job, for a new quote. Put that in that lead and then link that back to the job, and all your material updates will value your operation values will update, your job values will update. Really exciting stuff. This is a monumental movement forward for most businesses. And I certainly know your business, Felicity, in the commercial space. That's a massive one. So really exciting stuff. That's all come out and should be good. And then keep your eyes on the new releases. Like I said, working at lightning pace at the moment, the ability to duplicate and copy a quote into a new lead coming very, very soon. Good morning, Jess. How are you? I hope you are well as always. You're the highlight of my webinars. Lead item specs. Can these be brought through to job item specs? Slightly different question, but it is a good question. So yes, so automatically when you have a lead item spec, it will come through into a job so long as that job is connected to that lead. And yet another reason why lead connection is so important. So if you have a lead and you create those item specs and then you start a job with that connected lead, both the item specs and the linked quote will come through and all that information will flow through. Now, what I didn't mention, is sort of something I wanted to cover down the track, but I may as well mention it now because it is important, is those item specs also can pre-fill and generate the items in your quote. So just by I think in the last webinar we covered starting a lead, you built some item specs in the background, then you come back into your lead and you start a lead and you say, this lead is for chain fencing, and then some steel fencing and some color bond. And there's 3 different areas we're going to be covering. So we have 3 different item specs for those different sets. Or common one I get is often a lot of metal fab work is, we do balustrading. We might do an office fit out, for example. We do the balustrading. That's an item. We also do the bench tops. That's an item. We also do some structural interior fit out work. That's an item. Each of those is also an item spec. By adding those item specs to your lead, automatically when you generate your first quote, it's going to say, would you like to add those items in? Which is going to pre-fill the section straight away. So you start up your quote and it will say section, and then it will have item, balustrading, office bench tops, interior fit out. And then you start adding the components to the section. So just another layer of automation, and something that in the future that may allow us to do. And part of the reason we built the framework that way is you might be able to utilize things like your products and your material schedules that you've added into your item specs, because they're a fantastic tool for visibility, directly into that quote automatically. And that would be next level. But yeah, right now, absolutely. So item specs will come between lead and job so that they're very visible to the whole team. That's the whole point. And then that's also the reason we call them items, because that's the link in quote to those sections and items. When you create a copy of a quote for version 2, will it automatically set version 1 to the status as superseded, or do we need to set that status manually? That's an awesome question. I don't believe it sets it automatically. Reason being is you may create a copy of a quote, and as we just mentioned, one of the frameworks in the future will be the ability to copy a quote, put it into a new lead. So I wouldn't want you to copy it and then have it automatically supersede the previous one, if that makes sense, because that's still an active quote. With this lead, we're just copying it and moving it to another lead. So no, right now, I don't believe it does, and that's intentional. We do want you to have to go in and do that process, and it gives it the best of both worlds. It gives us a lot of flexibility whilst presenting that information. So no, right now, it won't do it automatically. I believe that the declined, if your status is set up correctly from your automation, though, will. So if your client comes back and declines the quote, it should automatically set that up to a decline quote status, which is very good. A lot of automation there, which is great. There are a heap of documents available setting up Jobman, but none of them will show Jobman works in action. Are there any documents available for building training documentation for staff? Great question. I think one of the big reasons why we're building these videos and why I like to do these webinars is because this is really the more how-to. And the why to as much as possible. I try to put a lot of why to in the business. And once this series is finished, this will be an availability for all of our clients for free to build this almost like an induction. And you can sort of pick and choose the areas that are important to clients, to your staff, for example. Your estimators, for example, you might want them to watch the quoting video so that they get a good understanding. I think that's something we will definitely look at for the future, is expanding on this series. I have a lot of ideas on some quick win videos and some training module videos for staff to really help them understand areas of the software. And something that is certainly very exciting to us as we are looking at the moment of investigating if we could put some of that documentation video in the software itself, which would be huge. Come into the software, come into the area of the quoting and get a quick wrap up on what's going on in that area without having to go to a webinar and watch that. But that's certainly why we present this information. We're continuing to expand. If that's something you're looking for, though, please do reach out to us, because I mean, one of the benefits of our business, of course, is we have a lot of good understanding of the business and a lot of people here who are very good at understanding software, and that's certainly something we're more than happy to run through with you and your staff to give them a good understanding. But it's a very good idea. I really appreciate it. And yes, absolutely, that is definitely part of our future layout plans. Present more education, more benefit for the software. Will a manager role being able to approve quotes if needed before the quote is sent to the client? So not currently, Caleb. That is an excellent question, and I can see why you would want that. Currently, or up until date, the software has always been around process management. So we have definitely wanted to keep that process as much out of our hands as possible. So put a process in where in those statuses we have quote, for example, created, quote sent, and then quote accepted. You may want to put a status in between, which is quote created, and before it is sent is quote awaiting approval, or a quote approved, for example. And then you build that status in, and that will give you that status. Unfortunately, it won't actually stop someone physically doing it. I'm not sure if you can. That's a good question. I have to check that out. There might be a way of stopping people actually sending quotes, though, which would mean you could come in and say you don't have the permission to send. You can create, but you can't send. Kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, ultimately, obviously, the point to Jobman is we do as much as we can to limit the benefit of the software, but we really ultimately want it there so the team gets involved and takes these things off your shoulders. As business owners, we don't want you sitting there all day having to handle these things. We want you to be able to scale and scale profitably. So as much as possible, we want to present as much flexibility for the team to be able to do their job, and then we limit where we can. But that is actually a really good idea. I'm going to make a note of that one after this webinar and just present it to the team. I don't think it would be too hard to create as an option. So I think it is possible, but I'm pretty certain it's not possible now, except maybe to turn off their ability to send quotes, unfortunately. But yeah, really good idea. Fabulous. Thanks, Felicity. Thanks, Jess. Thank you very much for your time. And where are we? Can I allow staff to see quotes without prices? Good question. Yes and no. So we currently have it limited to cost pricing, Linda, which is I think for a lot of businesses is a very important cut down, is that ability to come in and say, no, I don't want them knowing my costs. However, if you're kind of trusting a team to estimate for your business, it would be very difficult for me to understand the use case in where you wouldn't want them to know the price of the quote. There are areas of your business, 100%, where we know you don't want people seeing pricing, and that's why we very much separate the lead and job management area. We don't need most of our job team understanding pricing. But I think if you're going to trust someone in your business to quote, it is only makes sense that they understand the price, primarily because can you imagine sending a quote to a client and they have no idea of the price, they've made a mistake and they present a $10 million quote, and you get sued or you get a very bad review. I think it's important for them still to know the price the quote's going out. I mean, ultimately, I think in fact Australian consumer laws are sort of like that. You need to be able to present information in a way that's very clear. Absolutely, we agree. Hiding cost centers important for a lot of businesses, and that's why we've done it, but not prices. I think a quote is a price. It's what you're presenting. It's they need to know what they're pricing on. If we don't trust them to know what your prices are, probably shouldn't have them in that role, to be honest. But I sort of get where you're going with the question. I don't think it's something we ever want to tackle. I mean, even in a retail store, people put the shoes out. There's a price on those shoes. People know what they are. They have to know, because they have to be able to do their job. If clients are ringing up your estimators and saying, "Hey, what was this price for?" They go, "I don't know. I can't see the pricing." It's just going to look really bad. With that said, there are ways of creating templates in there. One of the common questions I get is, look, I have a separation between my sales and estimating team. I want them to be able to see what's being sold, but not necessarily the total price, in which case you can create templates without pricing on them whatsoever. You can use them as like delivery dockets or sales dockets. So they sort of can see what's going on without the price, but I think when it comes to actual quoting, we need pricing foundationally. But good question. I really appreciate the thought process there. If you have more detailed use case need where I can sort of wrap my head around that a bit more, and it is a legally optional thing, then it is certainly something we'd consider. But I just can't see the benefit to it, to be honest, in that one, I'm afraid. But good question. Thank you. Thanks, Jess. For drafting purposes. Okay, for drafting purposes, that makes more sense. So for drafting purposes, this is where item specs are really the key. And I was wondering if this is where you're going with that in the back of my head. I was thinking, why would you create a quote without a price? So yeah, absolutely. Templates, I get. A lot of people do them for delivery dockets and that. But for drafting purposes, my recommendation would definitely be the utilization of item specs. So the benefit of item specs is, as I mentioned to Jess previously, is they follow through from a lead to a job, and they can be very detailed, and they have copyable areas. So you can literally pull out an item spec, list it all the way through, and it can be a full list of inclusions for that job, which means for the drafting team, they don't need access to going, you don't need to give them access to leads. They can come into those item specs and they can basically see that. One of the other benefits in the business, in the software that I know it gets utilized a lot is, of course, the file storage management. So it is possible to create a template, and you could call that quote template without pricing. Now, I can't remove, like I said, I can't remove the pricing from the quoting, but I can remove it from the template. So what you could then do is save that template as a PDF, drop it in the job file, and the drafting team essentially does, now that I understand where you're going with that, have the access to the quote without the pricing. So they can see all the inclusions, they can see what they're meant to be drafting on. Absolutely, that could be dropped into the job files, and they never even have to see the leads or the quotes or the prices. So my answer to that is yes, that can be achieved now that I know what you're looking to achieve. In two very good ways. One is more automated than the other. Obviously, the filling out of item specs is super important, and it's very helpful, and it creates a lot of automation, not just to your drafting team, but to your lead management team, your estimating team, even the team on the ground, to get a lot of benefit out of those specs. But yes, if that's what you're looking to achieve, absolutely. And like I said, one of the other benefits of templates is you could modify the HTML to remove the pricing and then use it like almost like a packing slip for that job as well. And again, save it, drop it in that job file, and then it's visible to the team. So I hope that helps more. And now I get where you go with that. Great question. Yeah, really good. No problems. Thanks, Linda. All right, awesome. I think we'll leave it there. That's certainly run a little bit over, but not too bad at all. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I really appreciate it. Great questions. As I said, this webinar will be up soon, and really looking forward to the next one. So if you tuned in for this one, make sure you are available for the next one, because the advanced quoting and the presets, big stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. Have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you very soon. And I look forward to seeing you in the next webinar.